are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
This is Randy from Scream, a horror movie nerd.
Sliced and diced.
And he's going to be our guide to the one thing that makes horror movies so unique. The rules.
Never drink or do drugs.
He's going to help us find out what these rules are, where they came from, and what happens when they're broken.
Graphic orgies of blood and violence.
Oh, there he is. I told you he's right around the corner.
In the climax of Scream, Randy is watching Halloween.
Jeremy, look behind you.
Maybe the most iconic American slasher movie.
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
You know the drill. Michael Myers hunts down babysitters in a leafy suburb. And we can already see some of the rules materialise. There's a masked killer who stalks his victims before going on a killing spree and leaving a single final survivor.
This is standard horror movie stuff.
And it's this basic blueprint that almost every slasher movie would follow. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, they all come from here.
Formula to it. A very simple formula.
There's also something to be said about the nature of the killer. You see, in most previous horror films, and most since, the villain is some kind of monster. A vampire, a werewolf, or creature from the Black Lagoon. But what stands slasher movies apart is that the killer is almost always a person. It renders the fear much more tangible. It's not some fictional monster doing the murders, just an ordinary human being.
Serial killers are typically white males.
That's why it's perfect.
It was these rules that Scream would parody 20 years later. We've got the masked killer who stalks his victims. He goes on a killing spree, but this time there's multiple survivors. The ones who know the slasher rules know how to survive them.
Careful.
Like Randy.
This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life.
But Halloween isn't the only movie Scream references. Because in the early 80s, there was a massive boom in slasher films.
You know, cash in on all the movie murder hoopla.
From 1978 to 1984, over 100 movies were made.
The boogeyman.
The tropes were taken to a whole range of setups. Instead of Halloween, there's a New Year's movie. We've got all the summer camp films, a costume party on a train, and a disco-infused prom night.
Terror Train, Prom Night. How come Jamie Lee Curtis is in all of these movies?
And yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis kind of became the face of the genre, starring in 5 movies in 3 years.
She's the Scream Queen.
Even Tom Hanks got in on the action. His very first movie was a slasher movie.
Why, after seeing Psycho, were so many people afraid to take shower?
And as expected, almost all of them feature a masked killer who stalks their victims. They go on a killing spree, leaving a single final survivor.
Is anyone else alive?
It's what audiences wanted, and it was easily delivered.
When I look at scary movies, I like to jump.
But John Carpenter didn't just spawn these rules into existence in 1978. And even though slasher films seem like a very American genre, in order to uncover their true origins, we need to go across the Atlantic, all the way to Italy. Giallo films, named after a series of cheap murder mystery books, were the progenitor to American slasher movies. They combine suspense elements of detective fiction with scenes of shocking horror. And beneath this shocking horror is a strong emphasis on mystery. The central question of these films tends to be the killer's identity. We often only see them in black gloves, and we never see their face until the big reveal at the end.
It was you.
And although Randy never mentions them directly, this murder mystery influence is a part of Scream's DNA.
Everybody's a suspect!
It's got all of the slasher rules, plus a postmodern twist. But the basic question of the film is who is doing the murders.
The millennium. Motives are incidental.
Beyond this, it was with these films that the act of murder became the focus. It's not that they necessarily celebrated it, but it became a centerpiece of the experience. It was heightened and stylized. They treated the killing less as a plot device and more of a set piece. It reorientated the audience's attention towards the mechanics and aesthetics of violence. It created a kind of visual language that would come to define American slasher films and ultimately Scream. The prolonged cat-and-mouse structure of the opening mirrors Giallo kill scenes,
Hello?
which often sees the killer toying with their victims before they strike.
What's your favorite scary movie?
But there's one film I want to talk about in particular, a film that laid the foundation for so many of the slasher rules that would follow. Mario Bava's Bay of Blood. A film that actually has a very similar premise to Friday the 13th.
How far is it to Camp Crystal Lake?
A group of young people go to the lake. They hook up. There's a couple of graphic murders, and then a shocking ending. But not all of the slasher rules are there yet. There is a killing spree, but not a masked killer. And there are some survivors, until they get shot right at the end. But what we do get is a lot of shots like this. From behind a tree, through binoculars, or from outside a window. Because the lens is looking past some kind of obstruction in the foreground, it creates a sense of observation, a feeling of being watched, an evil presence lurking in the shadows, and stalking their victims. But what is this presence actually watching? A girl getting undressed, a revealing dance, and two people having sex. And this gives us our next rule: sex and death. When people have sex, they tend to be killed afterwards. This would become a major theme in later American movies. We can see it here in Friday the 13th. And yeah, that was Kevin Bacon.
It's gonna storm.
This rule acts as a kind of divine punishment for breaking the unspoken moral code of the slasher universe. So when Randy says this,
You can never have sex. Sex equals death.
we can trace it all the way back to here. Which got me thinking. The fear in these movies draws a lot from the unknown. We don't know what's behind Michael's mask or why Freddy Krueger can haunt our dreams. It channels the feeling of being watched and observed by something beyond our control.
Who is it?
But today, this isn't just limited to Haddonfield or Camp Crystal Lake. It's happening all the time online, which is why this video is sponsored by Incogni. Before you click away, let's do an experiment. Google your name, city, and location. Chances are it will turn up your address, phone number, email, and more. Incogni is a service that works to remove this information from the internet. With the custom removal service, all you have to do is copy the link to a site with your info and paste it into Incogni's dashboard, and then their team will get to work removing this data immediately. And here's the thing, these slasher rules apply to the online world as well. The killer's mask is the cookies they hide behind. They just appear as targeted ads rather than psycho killers. They're not stalking you in the dark, they're stalking your browser history. Every search, every sign up is another footprint they follow you by. The killing spree, that's your info getting sold over and over and over again. And the final survivor, well, there isn't one. The only way to get out alive is by signing up to Incogni. So take your personal data back. Use code ARCHER at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. Let's fast forward to 1974, perhaps the most important year in slasher movie history. Because while there have been a couple of antecedents, it was with Black Christmas and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that the genre truly came into its own. And they didn't just release on the same year, but on the same day. Both of these movies perfectly articulated many of the rules that would become mainstream, perhaps the most obvious one being the final girl. But before we get onto that, let's take a look at the opening of Black Christmas. Because straight away, one of the major tropes of the genre is on full display: the POV shot. The film begins with the killer breaking into a sorority house. We see him climb up the trellis and go in through the window, but we have no idea who or what this person is. There's a tension there. But it's not only what we see, but what we hear that creates the horror. The whistling wind, creaky floorboards, heavy breathing. It drives home the feeling of this shot. It just wouldn't work if it sounded like this. Across the film, the POV shot is used in almost all of the kills. For the first murder, we learn the killer is in the room by switching to his perspective. By using this perspective, it allows as much tension as possible to be squeezed out from these kill sequences. Every step of the way we know where the killer is and when he's going to attack, but the victim doesn't. It makes us want to scream at them to escape, elevating these sequences from a simple death scene to a set-piece spectacle. But Black Christmas wasn't the first film to use this shot. As we know, Mario Bava made use of these stalking shots in Bay of Blood. And the most famous example is Psycho. But we've also got a film called Peepin' Tom from 1960, which shows the murder unfold through a camera being held by the killer. But it was Black Christmas's repeated use, alongside its immersive sound design and violent spectacle, that made this the most effective articulation of the trope yet. But then came Friday the 13th, which uses our knowledge of this shot to work against us.
Hey, wasn't that the road up for Camp Crystal Lake back there?
The first two kills both use the killer's POV, establishing that this technique is part of the film's toolbox. But then we get this shot of Marcy. She's gone off on her own in the dark, and the rules dictate that now she has to be killed. The camera is at a distance and shooting past the open door, implying that this is a POV shot of the killer stalking his victim. When she turns away, the camera gets closer, the danger becomes more urgent. But then, something interesting happens. Marcy looks at the camera, and there's no one there. This wasn't a POV shot after all. As the audience, we thought we knew where the killer was. We felt relatively safe in our knowledge of how this attack was going to play out. But now that feeling of safety is gone.
Jack?
We also get a shot through the window. Is this the killer's POV? We don't know. The killer could be anywhere, and we're just as unsure as the victim. And this is done throughout the film. Many of the typical tells like a hand or heavy breathing are gone, yet the camera sways as if it's from a POV. We're never 100% sure if we're watching through the eyes of the killer or not. We never know when the danger is close. In Friday the 13th, any scene could become a kill scene, subverting this rule of the POV shot and spreading tension across the entire movie. But this perspective doesn't have to be the killer's, as we can see here in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film is largely responsible for taking horror out of Gothic castles and putting it firmly in the American heartland.
You'd go tell him your granddaddy's buried in there.
Using grainy 16mm footage and an entirely unknown cast, the film blurred the line between fiction and documentary.
Grave robbing in Texas is this hour's top news story.
The nature of the killer is also at play here. Leatherface wasn't an unkillable supernatural force, but something that felt real. He's just a deranged man in a mask with a chainsaw. The film acts as a journey into an American heart of darkness, a reflection of the growing cultural anxieties of 1970s USA. Leatherface's family and their indifferent, dispassionate approach to murder represented a potent metaphor for how society had turned on itself. This would-be all-American family are now just deranged cannibals. This is also where the final girl trope emerged, but in its very earliest form. This is Sally. She's on a road trip with her friends in the Texas countryside. You know what happens next. All the others are killed, leaving her alone to survive against the killer. But through pure endurance, she manages to escape. She emerges onto the road at dawn, completely drenched in blood. In that final laugh-turned-scream as she rides away in the back of the truck, she becomes horror cinema's first true survivor figure. A character defined by her unbroken will to survive. But Sally is a bit different to Laurie Strode from Halloween or all of the others that followed, because the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is missing one crucial element to the final girl. You'll notice in Halloween that Laurie is surrounded by people who do drugs
Get rid of it.
or have sex,
Go get me a beer.
but not her. She embodies a kind of conservative moral purity which ultimately allows her to survive.
It's tragic, you never go out.
As Randy would say, it's the sin factor.
Never drink or do drugs. The sin factor. It's a sin.
But why was this the case? Why was it that those who rebelled against these conservative ideals ended up dead?
No, we're just having a little party.
Well, to understand this, we need to go back and have a look at the social context.
Today is Saturday, my work at home day.
I know what you're thinking. This isn't the 1980s.
I get things started while Julia's out doing the shopping.
But the trends that would later give us this all began here.
I remembered that day when Julia and I made up our minds
with the suburbs.
And we were going to build our own home.
Starting in the 50s and 60s, middle-class, mostly white families were retreating to the suburbs. They were going to live an idyllic life with their nuclear family, away from the undesirable influences of the city where kids could grow up in a perfect, protected bubble.
And try and maybe to make it even a little better for our children.
But by the 80s, this bubble had popped. A growing sense of paranoia was beginning to creep into the suburbs.
Is there a well-organized plot to program the minds of our children towards the occult and witchcraft?
Removing every so-called bad influence on their kids didn't do much to reassure parents' concerns. In fact, it made them imagine threats that weren't really there.
Even smurfs carry a homosexual connotation in that most of them are male.
This was the era of Ronald Reagan, heavy metal, and the satanic panic.
It's almost in to be satanic, and I think that speaks of the culture abandoning its Christian roots.
There was a lot of anxiety and paranoia going round over children's safety.
The Force is a word used by witches down through the centuries to describe the power they receive from Satan.
And slasher films channel these anxieties into a physical embodiment. The masked killer who invades a would-be idyllic community like the suburbs or the summer camp and preys on its teenage residents, corrupt in this prudent and safe setting.
They call this place Camp Blood.
But these teenagers were mostly already corrupted. A lot of the characters in these films do a lot of drugs and have a lot of sex. It's the sin factor.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
And what happens to these characters? They get killed. Over and over again. But this isn't everyone. There's always one character who doesn't drink and doesn't do drugs. They have the moral fortitude to resist these corrupting forces.
Not now.
And so, they resist a physical embodiment of these forces too. The final girl isn't just the only one to survive, but a conservative representation of the perfect teenager. It's the good babysitter, the girl who gets to summer camp early to help out, or the girl who says her prayers.
I pray the Lord my soul to take.
But the final girl in Scream is Sydney.
Do you like scary movies, Sydney?
Who on the surface has all the tropes.
Did you settle for a PG-13 relationship?
But as the film unfolds, she strays from this path. Right after Randy says this,
you can never have sex.
She does this.
You are so amazing.
She breaks the most important rule, but still survives. In fact, she doesn't just survive, but fights back. Using her knowledge of the tropes to her advantage, like using the killer's gimmick against him.
Oh, Stu.
Or killing him with the TV that's playing Halloween, literally using horror movie lore to survive.
In your dreams.
This is why Scream is the perfect bookend to this video. It's a culmination of over 30 years of horror movie history.
Now you're no longer a virgin.
All of the rules are there, but with a self-aware twist. The killer doesn't just wear a mask, but an over-the-top theatrical cloak. We can see Giallo influences on its murder mystery elements. The central question of the film is the killer's identity.
So who are you?
The suburban paranoia of the 80s had faded by 1996, so the film takes a postmodern twist.
What movie is this from? I spit on your garage.
They even acknowledge a level of sexism that is inherent to the final girl.
No, it's just what's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
And all of this is embodied in Randy.
Is that you, Randy?
His explanation of the tropes turns us into insiders.
You want to play Psycho Killer?
It lets us know we're watching a horror movie that knows it's a horror movie.
I never thought I'd be so happy to be a virgin.
Commenting on slasher cliches while actively playing them out.
Here comes the obligatory chit shot.
He's yelling at Laurie from Halloween to look behind her at the exact moment Ghostface is behind him.
Jamie, look behind you.
The genre is folding in on itself.
Behind you.
It's both a perfect execution and a perfect commentary on slashers.
Several more local teens are dead.
It's simultaneously a parody and a celebration. It's an acknowledgement of what makes horror movies so unique. The rules.